Okay, let's try this again. I'm a little afraid to click on that pen because when I did it last time, it kind of shut me out. So sorry the video got broken up into two parts, but um, we'll just go from there and try and make this work. So if you look, if you can follow the cursor, you can see all of the D here, and this was the product, right? And so now all of the D, when you make more molecules, if you just think of how molecules move around and bump into each other in a given space, and they're constantly moving, there's a chance that that D is going to now run into enzyme 1. And in this case, if D runs into enzyme 1, it's going to inhibit that reaction, and enzyme 1 won't work anymore, so A does not get turned into B, and then that will shut down the whole process. So back to the more gets you less. The more D I make, the quicker D will run into enzyme 1 and shut down this feedback loop. So why do we need this? Why do we need to make things and then shut them down really quickly? Well, think about when you get a cut. What do you want to have happen? If you get a cut, you probably want your blood to clot, right? So that you don't bleed out. So your clotting factors are sent. Do you want your blood to continue to clot indefinitely? Probably not, right? Blood clots are bad. So you have to have a mechanism that starts the process, but then not too long after that process is started, it needs to shut down. And so there comes a point where you have this feedback loop that will shut down that loop. And so it is more regulatory in nature. It works for clotting, it works for homeostasis. When you get cold, you shiver, and that resets you back to being warmer. When you get hot, you sweat, that resets you back to being cooler. So it's kind of a lot of these regulation mechanisms in our body that use negative feedback loops. Okay. Positive feedback loop, more gets you more. So the opposite. So in this case, the product is letter Z, and the more Z I make, the faster it's going to make enzyme 5 work, and more things are going to happen, and it's going to just keep accelerating, and things are going to happen. So things accelerate in nature. If you think of things that maybe isn't biological, an avalanche would be positive feedback, right? It starts, you can picture a small snowball rolling down the hill, and then it picks up more and more steam as it goes, and pretty soon the whole mountain is collapsing and going down, causing an avalanche. So that would be positive feedback. In biology sense, there's a few things you can think of too. Breastfeeding works this way. So the more a baby suckles, the more signals get sent to the mom's brain to release more milk. So that's positive feedback. It also happens in childbirth when contractions start coming faster and more powerful. That means the body is getting ready to actually birth the child. Another way is transformation. Right here on the slide, transformation is like tadpoles turning into frogs and caterpillars and butterflies and stuff like that. Once that process starts, it's a positive feedback loop where it's not going to like stop halfway or go in reverse. It's going to go all the way, and it's going to carry out that transformation. Okay, so hopefully those loops make sense. We're going to talk about feedback loops a lot throughout the year. They're going to make appearances in different topics. So the third way is discovery-based science, and this one's kind of funny because it's just let's see what this does. You don't really have any preconceived notion. You don't really know what's going to happen. There's no research out there for you to check before you try it. This would be a really probably bad one to try in chemistry if you just did the let's see what this does with chemistry. Although I'm guessing that's probably how 100 years ago or 200 or 300 years ago, there were some people that just said, let's try this, and then they figured out what not to do. So just a different way to look at things. This slide here just kind of shows you how things are organized a little bit by the College Board. The class is built on 4 big ideas, and you can tell from the slide the biggest idea is evolution. Everything relates back to evolution, and you're probably going to look at evolution a little differently once we get to it and we go through it. Really, evolution is just change over time. It's how everything has changed over the millions of years that the planet has existed. And so we can take almost everything we will talk about this year and relate it back to that. The other big ideas are matter and energy and information. So how do those all relate to the topics we're going to talk about? And then a little bit smaller, but still important, regulation, communication, and interactions. Those are way more specific, and those are getting us into some really different parts of our units where we'll be doing more specific things. This is just kind of a little framework of how things are going to be organized. We'll run through some of the characteristics of life here, and we'll kind of meander through some just general stuff here. So evolution was developed by Darwin, you should remember from regular bio, but it is the most unifying concept in biology, okay? So natural selection has really been going on for 4.5 billion years because that's the age of the Earth. And so it's been happening since then, pretty much. The general idea is that organisms with variation compete for resources. Their survivors will pass on their traits to their offspring, and that process just repeats. And over the billions of years, we've gotten amazing results, and we've gotten to this point where we have all of this different types of life. Life is organized, it's classified by scientists, and we look at things like domains. When I was a student, domains were not a thing. The biggest classification level was kingdom. You guys probably remember kingdom, phylum, class, family, order, genus, species, right? And so now domains are above the kingdom, and there's 3 of them. And the top 2 are both bacteria. Eubacteria and archaebacteria are both different types of bacteria, where eubacteria is just everyday bacteria, and then the archaebacteria live in really extreme environments, really acidic, really salty, really hot, places where nothing else can really live. And then the bottom one there, eukarya, you can maybe relate that to that term eukaryote. And these are all the multicellular things. The other kingdoms, the plants, animals, fungi, and protists, okay? Cells being ordered is one of the, characteristics of life, and that's where the matter comes in from the slide, the organizational slide a couple slides ago. We're talking about how things are ordered and what things are being used in life and kind of the actual material, right, of how this is going to go. Energy is super important. Different sources obtain energy different ways. Obviously, plants get energy very different from animals. So energy is used to maintain order in the organisms, and all of life is subject to these laws, energy laws of the universe. If you can remember the energy laws, the first law of thermodynamics, you probably learned in like 7th grade, where energy cannot be created or destroyed. And now there's a little back end of that, which some people don't remember, but it can be transferred, right? It can change, it can be altered. And so that has to do with the second law of thermodynamics, which you can sum up, hopefully, from your chemistry class in one word. You know what that word is? Pause it. Starts with an E. Entropy. Okay? So entropy is the second law of thermodynamics. Remember, not all energy that gets transferred from one thing to another, you don't get 100% of that. There's always energy lost as heat, right? And this is the disorder or the chaos. Hopefully you remember talking about that in your chemistry class. So, these all definitely relate. And what we're trying to do as living things is we are trying to put off and delay entropy as long as we possibly can. Because if entropy takes over our bodies, guess what happens? We die. Okay, so from the time you're born, you're trying to take care of yourself and have your cells delay entropy as long as you possibly can. Okay. Information, pretty standard. DNA, RNA, all of the molecules that hold the information that tell everything what to be what. Those are pretty straightforward. I'm pretty sure you guys are all okay with that one. Regulation and homeostasis. Things have to, monitor the internal conditions inside. I imagine all of you guys remember homeostasis from regular bio as well. Development, coordination, maintenance all play into this. Communication is big, right? And the communication is different ways. It could be nervous system and how we send signals that tell our bodies what to do, and move your finger like this, right? That's a nervous system signal that's doing that. And it goes from, there's chemical signals and there's electrical signals, and it ends up getting to the muscle and tell it to do this, right? But there's also different ways to communicate, like the birds down here in the corner. They're like doing a mating ritual, and they're communicating different ways. It's between organisms. So there's lots of different ways that things communicate, and we'll get to that toward the end of the year as well. Interactions, now we're talking more about ecology, and there's different ways things interact, right? Reproduction would be an interaction, okay, and that's a characteristic of life. And there's asexual reproduction, and there's sexual reproduction. There's so many different ways things reproduce, probably more than you know. These pictures all depict down here in the corner different ways that things reproduce. There's binary fission, and there's budding, and there's parthenogenesis, which is a super weird one, where you don't actually need both sexes. And so more things in the world actually reproduce asexually than they do sexually. So another way of interactions down here in the bottom right-hand corner with the plants, leaning toward the light, you have that's reacting to stimuli, responding to stimuli. So more interactions going on there, and obviously the cheetahs. And sometimes animals work together, sometimes they work against each other. Maybe they're competing for the same food, maybe they're hunting together. Maybe they're competing for a mate. So there's intra and inter relationships going on where they might be working with or against each other. So whole lots of different things that go on, and we'll get to all of that. So this is all just overview stuff. I always put big questions at the end of my PowerPoints, and even the in-class kids, we do not take time to go over these in class. These are just questions that maybe the next day you go back to this PowerPoint, or next couple of days, you're like, oh, I should probably start reviewing a little bit. Well, go to these questions. Can you answer them? Do you remember in a day or two what we talked about? These are good questions to kind of keep you on track with what you should be figuring out as you're going. Good review questions for quizzes and stuff like that. So there can be anywhere from 1 to however many I can fit on a slide that will kind of sum up the big ideas of that lecture for you. So that's it for now, and I hope that was helpful to you guys. Okay, see ya.